Today we bring you a video full of mysteries and enigmas that defy logic and history. We will explore surprising finds, from archaeological discoveries that seem straight out of a science fiction movie to stories of advanced technology that seem impossible for their time. Number 1. Canopic glasses. The mummification process of the Egyptians consisted of the extraction of the main organs and then carrying out a separate mummification process. Later, they were kept in special containers that were placed next to the mummy. We are referring to the canopic jars, a constant throughout the history of Egypt, and today they are a valuable source of information for archaeologists. They were usually closed with a flat slab since the discovery of the process, but at the beginning of the New Kingdom, the plug took the shape of the head of the deceased and of various animals. Centuries later, the head of these different vases protected the organ they contained. Additionally, it had representations of different deities. For example, Hapi had a human head and kept the liver, Imsidi had a lid in the shape of a baboon's head and kept the lungs, Duamutef with a jackal-shaped lid contained the stomach. The containers were protected in a tomb by a titular goddess such as Isis, Nephthys, Selkis and Nephthys, and had to be oriented towards one of the cardinal points, as required by the ritual. In this ancient culture there was a belief that if they were not kept well, the deceased would not revive in the afterlife. Number 2. The Silver Pharaoh. In 1940, the Frenchman Pierre Monti made an unprecedented archaeological discovery that earned the recognition of the scientific community. What he found was the tomb of the ancient Egyptian pharaoh Susneps I. The discovery occurred in the city of Tennis, where the crypt was almost intact. Susneps first ruled from 1039 to 991 BC. His original name, Susenzai, means the star that appears in the beloved city of Ammon. His burial demonstrated great magnificence commensurate with his importance. In the tomb was not only the pharaoh, but also his wife, two other pharaohs before his reign, a prince and a priest. Looking at his sarcophagus, we will know that he was called the Silver Pharaoh. The outer sarcophagus was made of red granite, and the middle one was made of black granite, both of which had been reused or usurped. The mummy of Susneps was inside a third solid silver coffin, something unusual in ancient Egypt, since having to be imported, it was a rarer and more valuable metal than gold. Additionally, the coffin had rich gold decoration, including a funerary mask. The entire outer shell was found surprisingly in very good condition. Its interior, on the other hand, was completely disintegrated, indicating that, despite the luxury, the best preparations were not made for the preservation of the body. Number 3. The Bowl of Gold. In 1958, archaeologists in northwestern Iran discovered a shattered bowl of gold in the charred remains of an ancient fortress called Harts or Hizar-Anshan. This Iron Age fortress was near present-day Panar. The bowl was more than 3,000 years old and belonged to the royal domains of Urartu, an Iron Age kingdom in Armenia. The bowl was decorated with images of warriors, chariots, and mythological figures made of solid gold. Although very valuable in its time, it was found damaged among the ruins of Harts. Experts believe that around 800 BC, Harts was attacked by enemies who invaded the citadel during the chaos of the invasion. 3 soldiers attempted to take the golden bowl, but were trapped under the rubble as the citadel was destroyed by fire. His outstretched hands held the shattered remains of the bowl. These soldiers were not heroes, but looters who risked their lives for material gain and lost both their lives and treasure. This shattered bowl is a reminder of the dangers of looting and greed in times of war, and how it often leads to significant human and material loss. Number 4. Vampires in Poland. 17th century remains of a boy with a triangular anti-vampire lock on his leg were found at an archaeological site in Poland. Scientists believe that the locals feared that this child could come to life as a vampire. In the Middle Ages in Europe, many believed in vampires and used various methods to keep the dead in the grave. The boy was only a few years old when the deceased was buried face down, as if his actions aroused fear even after death, according to the beliefs of the Middle Ages. Such burials made the sick bite the ground and pose no threat to people. Also found nearby were a group of skeletons of other children and fragments of copper objects, which were probably placed in the mouth of the deceased. Number 5. Panda in the tomb. After the death of an emperor who lived 2,200 years ago, the remains of a giant panda were discovered near his refuge. At that time, scientists did not even suspect that these animals could have lived in China during the reign of the emperor. Many other creatures were also found near the tomb, from powerful tigers to peacocks and monkeys. Unfortunately, many of them are now threatened. Number 6. The lead sarcophagus of Notre Dame de Paris. The lead sarcophagus of Notre Dame Cathedral, also known as Our Lady of Paris, was discovered during restoration works after the devastating fire of 2019. Two mysterious sarcophagi were found under the nave of the cathedral and, after months of investigation, details about the people buried in them were revealed. The first sarcophagus is believed to contain the ashes of Antoine de la Porte, a high priest, while the second houses the remains of an unknown man nicknamed Le Cavalier, presumably a horseman. Although these discoveries shed light on the history of individuals from different eras, there is still much to learn about their lives and historical implications. Investigations revealed that Antoine de la Porte led a sedentary life with signs of food and alcohol abuse. His burial site adorned with royalties suggests an aristocratic heritage. On the other hand, the second sarcophagus, which contains Le Cavalier, presents notable differences, indicating that these people lived in different times. The discovery of these sarcophagi has added a new chapter to the history of Notre Dame Cathedral and has generated interest in the life and society of those buried within. Archaeological research continues to unravel more details about these historical figures and their connection to the rich history of the cathedral and the city of Paris. Number 7. The Vikings, known for their ferocity, carried the Ulfbert sword, a weapon constructed of steel so pure that its quality remains difficult to replicate today. Around 171 Ulfbert swords, dating between 800 and 1000 AD, have been found in Europe. These swords were made of a metal with almost no impurities, known as crucible steel, which required smelting iron at very high temperatures, something unknown in Europe for centuries. Ulfbert steel contained 3 times more carbon than other swords of the time, making them stronger, more flexible, and lighter. This level of purity and carbon control was a feat thought impossible before the Industrial Revolution. However, medieval blacksmiths could not reach the temperatures necessary to separate slag from iron. Experts believe that temperatures of 1,700 degrees Celsius were needed to make Ulfbert, which Viking smiths achieved 800 years before their time. Although the secret of its construction has been lost, modern blacksmith Richard Furrer managed to recreate a similar sword using medieval technology, although he described it as extremely complex. The name Ulfbert engraved on the swords remains an enigma. Some believe it represents a legendary blacksmith or a family of blacksmiths, while others suggest it could be related to a monastery or secret society. The Ulfbert were probably weapons of the Viking elite, as only 171 have been found. The origin of the technology used to create these swords is unknown, which has led to speculation about the influence of an advanced civilization on the knowledge of metallurgy. The mystery of the name Ulfbert and how the Vikings acquired this technology remains one of the great archaeological enigmas. Number 8. The Mysterious Stones of Aztlan. In 1999, Dr. Pablo Garcia Sanchez discovered stones in the desert area of El Toro, in Ahuelos, Jalisco, that appear to represent extraterrestrial visits 27,000 years ago. The stones show flying saucers, gray aliens, and scenes from space, mixing Mesoamerican styles. Some even have star maps and representations of the Aztec calendar with alien faces. The artifacts, some made of stone and others of kaolin, baffle researchers due to their quality and the technique used. According to carbon-14 tests, they date back thousands of years. In 2015, Garcia published a book suggesting that these artifacts indicate extraterrestrial influences on the Aztec civilization, linking them to the mythical Aztlan. A farmer also found 3,000 artifacts in a cave, of which 2,500 were made of stone and the rest were made of kaolin. These objects, without molds, appear to have a layer of patina that does not adhere permanently, which surprised the researchers. Despite the evidence, the authenticity of the artifacts is debated. Researchers like Klaus Dona support its antiquity, while critics demand more studies. Mexican authorities dismissed the discovery as a hoax, but the possibility of ancient contact with extraterrestrials remains open. Number 9. Al Nasla Rock Formation. The Al Nasla Rock Formation towers above its surroundings with petroglyphs dating back thousands of years, and signs of human occupants dating back to the Bronze Age. Its most notable feature, however, is that it is divided in half, with each piece of the block resting on a thin, small pedestal. Although many people question whether nature could have generated such a feature, three important geological factors are responsible for one of the most impressive rock formations in the world. Another fractured joint parallel to the main fissure can be found at the back of Al Nasla, which could be a clue. Erosion of sandstone and limestone leads to spectacular features throughout the Arabian Peninsula. Earthquakes and fault lines could have played a role in the formation of the Al Nasla fissure. Although its fate is inevitable, Al Nasla remains a geological wonder. Number 10. In 1912, the American bibliophile Wilfrid Voynich bought an astonishing manuscript from Italian monks. It contained text written in an unknown language, as well as many illustrations. The manuscript consists of 248 pages measuring 22.5 by 16 centimeters and is divided into several sections: botany, astronomical, biological, astrological, pharmaceutical, and recipes. Each entry is accompanied by an illustration. However, the drawings represent objects that do not exist on Earth. For example, the pharmaceutical section contains illustrations of unknown medicinal plants and the astronomical section of planets unknown to science. The author of the book also remains unknown. However, in 2009, scientists managed to determine that the manuscript was written in the 14th century. For a long time, specialists tried to decipher the text of the manuscript, but to this day no one has succeeded. For this reason, the manuscript is associated with extraterrestrial civilizations. Perhaps it tells of life on an unknown planet, but all these hypotheses lack evidence. Now you understand why the Voynich manuscript is considered one of the most mysterious manuscripts in the world. Number 11. In 1974, a group of workers found at the bottom of the Mureș River, in Romania, ancient remains of mastodons that lived on our planet more than 11,000 years ago. Among the bones was also an unusual object. People did not understand what it was and decided to hand over their discovery to the Cluj-Napoca Institute. Scientists became interested in the strange object and began to investigate it. Initially, experts made measurements of the object, which they called the Iod wedge. Its length was 20.2 centimeters, width 12.5 centimeters, and height 7 centimeters. The scientists then proceeded to study the composition of the object. The wedge was made of a very complex alloy that included about 12 different elements, but most of the alloy consisted of aluminum. The thickness of the oxide layer covering the wedge was 1 millimeter. This led scientists to assume that the age of the mysterious object was at least 300 years. But how is it possible if aluminum was obtained by the Danish physicist Hans Christian Ørsted in 1825? Furthermore, the wedge was found next to ancient mastodon remains, suggesting that its age could be thousands of years. Naturally, such an unusual object aroused the interest of ufologists, who assumed that the wedge was an object of extraterrestrial origin. Surprisingly, this hypothesis was accepted by renowned aerospace engineers, who confirmed that the object could be the landing gear support of a spacecraft. Iode's aluminum wedge is also sometimes called a misplaced artifact, as scientists still cannot precisely determine its age and purpose. Number 12. Ancient Egypt is considered one of the main civilizations related to extraterrestrial races. And if you still doubt this, here is another proof of this fact. In 1922, near the Egyptian city of Luxor, British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered the tomb of the famous Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun. Entering the tomb, Carter found a sarcophagus with the mummy of the ruler, as well as many treasures, among which was an unusual dagger. Despite its age of more than 3,300 years, the dagger was perfectly preserved. It had a golden handle with ornamentation and a unique decoration, difficult to associate with the time of the ancient world. For a long time, the dagger was the object of study by scientists. In 2016, specialists were able to study the chemical composition of the weapon using an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer. The results of this research showed that the dagger was made of a material of extraterrestrial origin. Scientists believe the weapon was made using a meteorite. Whether Tutankhamun knew that his dagger blade had an extraterrestrial origin is unknown, but it is possible that during his reign, people already knew about space objects that periodically fall to Earth. Number 13. Pharaoh Akhenaten, also known as Amenhotep IV, ruled Egypt from 365 to 1349 BC. Agathon is considered the most mysterious pharaoh of all. If you look at his sculptures, you can see that he had an atypical appearance compared to the other pharaohs. He did not look like a stern, strong, and powerful man. Instead, he was characterized by a soft look, thinness, feminine rounded hips, and an elongated face shape. It is not known if Agathon really had that androgynous appearance or if he just wanted to be represented as a figure that combined both masculine and feminine characteristics at the same time. Akhenaten was known as one of the most influential religious innovators in human history. He turned Egypt into a monotheistic society, abandoning the worship of many gods. The only god for Agathon was Aten, or the solar disk. In his honor, he built the city of Amarna. But the most surprising thing is that Aten described his connection with celestial beings and considered himself one of them. Furthermore, recent research by scientists showed that this pharaoh had several genetic mutations. Ufologists believe that he was subjected to experiments carried out by extraterrestrials. Ancient Egypt was shrouded in mysteries that remain unsolved to this day. Therefore, it is not known who he really was, an ordinary human or perhaps an alien?